Tayri's skin shimmered with anxiety as the Earth grew larger through the viewport. The blue-green planet looked so different from her homeworld. More water, more chaos, more unpredictability. Like all Lumidary, her translucent epidermis reflected her emotions. Right now, rippling patches of nervous blue pulsed across her slender frame. Final approach to orbital station Unity, announced the ship's eye. Please prepare for docking procedures. As the first Lumidary chosen for long-term cultural exchange with humans, Tayri felt the weight of responsibility. 6 years of studying human language and culture hadn't prepared her for the reality of meeting them face to face. The ship shuddered slightly as docking clamps engage. Tayri gathered her few possessions, mostly data crystals containing research materials and personal logs, and moved toward the airlock. Her four-fingered hand hesitated over the control panel. This was the moment that would go down in the historical records of both species. The airlock hissed open, revealing a small welcoming committee of 3 humans. Tayri immediately noticed how solid they looked compared to the semi-translucent Lumidary. Their skin was opaque, their movements more abrupt. The lead human, a female with black hair tied back tightly, stepped forward. "Welcome to Orbital Station Unity. I am Dr. Hannah Park, head of Cynobiology. On behalf of Earth United Nations, we welcome you." Tayri's translator chip processed the words, though she understood basic English already. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture she had practiced. "I am honored to represent the Lumidary Collective," she replied. "I am Tayri, third-level xenobiologist." The human smiled, showing teeth, a gesture Tayri had been told was friendly, though it still looked strangely aggressive to her Lumidary sensibilities. "These are my colleagues, Dr. Min-Ho Lee and Captain Jun Kim," Hannah continued, gesturing to the 2 humans behind her. Tayri noticed how close they stood to each other. Lumidary maintained careful distance due to their sensitive bioelectric fields. Humans seemed to enjoy proximity. "We've prepared quarters for you in the science wing," Hannah explained as they walked. "We tried to adjust the lighting and humidity to Lumidary specifications." The station buzzed with activity. Humans moved purposefully through corridors, many stopping to stare at Tayri. She understood their curiosity. Previous contact had been limited to diplomatic video communications and a brief visit by human representatives to the Lumidary homeworld. In the science wing, Hannah showed Tayri to her quarters, a spacious room with adjustable lighting currently set to the soft purple glow preferred by Lumidary. "The bathroom facilities are through there," Hannah pointed. "We've modified them based on the specifications your government provided." Tayri nodded. "You have been most thoughtful." After Hannah left, Tayri explored her new living space. The room was comfortable, but the station's constant mechanical hum felt foreign compared to the crystal silence of Lumidary habitats. She placed her personal resonance crystal on a shelf, a piece of home to ground her during this strange mission. The next morning, Tayri met her research partner, Dr. Hannah Park, in the biology lab. The lab was filled with equipment both familiar and strange to Tayri's eyes. "Today I thought we might start with a tour of the station," Hannah said. "Then perhaps you could tell me more about your research interests." As they walked, Tayri observed humans interacting. She noticed 2 humans pressing their faces together in a corridor. "What are those humans doing?" she asked, her skin flickering with curiosity. Hannah followed her gaze. "Oh, they're kissing. It's an affectionate greeting between partners. Partners in research." Hannah laughed. "Sometimes, but usually romantic partners." Tayri filed this information away. The concept of romance existed in Lumidary translated literature, but seemed far more central to human society. They entered the station's central hub, a large open area where dozens of humans gathered around tables, consuming nutrients. "This is the main cafeteria," Hannah explained. "Would you like to try some human food? Our scientists believe it should be compatible with your digestive system." Tayri's eye stalks extended slightly in interest. "I would be pleased to try." At a table, Hannah brought over 2 trays. This is simple: rice, vegetables, and some mild sauce. Let me know if anything disagrees with you. Tyree carefully manipulated the eating utensils, mimicking Hannah's movements. The sensation of solid food was unusual. Lumidae typically absorbed nutrient mists through their semi-permeable skin, but not unpleasant. The texture is fascinating, Tyree commented. As they ate, more humans entered the cafeteria. Many stared at Tyree, whispering among themselves. "I apologize for the attention," Hannah said. "You're quite a celebrity here." "It is expected," Tyree replied. "When your kind first visited our world, many Lumidae requested viewing permits." After the meal, they continued their tour. Passing through a recreation area, Tyree observed humans engaged in physical activities. "Exercise is important for human health," Hannah explained. "Without it, our muscles weaken." Tyree watched as humans lifted weights and ran on machines. "Fascinating. Lumidae maintain our physical structure through cellular resonance meditation." As the day ended, Tyree returned to her quarters to record her observations. She noted how humans touched constantly: handshakes, pats on shoulders, even embraces. Such physical contact was rare among Lumidae, whose sensitive bioelectric fields made touch uncomfortable except during specific ceremonies. In her personal log, she noted, "Humans appear to crave physical connection in ways Lumidae do not. Their social bonds seem reinforced through contact. Must investigate further whether this relates to their reproductive biology, which remains unclear from previous studies." Little did Tyree know that this line of inquiry would soon lead to her most shocking discovery about human biology, one that would challenge everything she thought she understood about evolutionary development and send ripples through both human and Lumidae society. Tyree had been on orbital station Unity for 3 weeks now. Her days fell into a comfortable pattern: breakfast with Hannah, research in the xenobiology lab, observations of human social behaviors, and evening meditation in her quarters. The humans had been welcoming, if occasionally overwhelming with their constant noise and movement. Today, Hannah had given Tyree full access to the station's biological database for independent research. "Feel free to explore any topics you're curious about," she had said before being called away to an emergency meeting. Alone in the research pod, Tyree's fingers glided over the control panel. She had been meaning to study Earth's diverse ecosystem. The variety of life forms on the blue planet fascinated her. But as she navigated through the database categories, a file labeled Human Reproductive Biology, educational materials caught her attention. Tyree hesitated. During her preparation, this topic had been covered only in the most clinical terms. Lumidae scientists had theorized that humans reproduced through some form of genetic exchange, but details were sparse in the diplomatic briefings. Scientific curiosity won out. She opened the file. The first video began playing automatically, a medical animation of human reproduction. Tyree's eye stalks extended in shock as she watched. Her translucent skin flushed a deep purple of embarrassment mixed with the green of confusion. The video showed human males and females engaging in direct physical contact, bodily penetration, and exchange of fluids. It detailed internal fertilization, and then, most shocking of all, the growth of offspring inside the female's body for months, followed by a graphic depiction of birth. Tyree quickly closed the file, her breathing rapid. This couldn't be correct. Perhaps she had accessed fictional content or ancient historical records. She opened another file, then another. Each confirmed what the first had shown. Humans reproduced through direct physical contact. They grew their young inside their bodies. When Hannah returned hours later, she found Tyree still at the console, surrounded by paused images of human reproductive anatomy. "Tyree, is everything okay?" Hannah asked, noticing the Lumidae's skin pulsing with distressed colors. I accessed information about human reproduction," Tyree said, her voice higher than usual. "There must be some mistake." Hannah looked at the screen and understanding dawned on her face. "Ah, I see. This cannot be how humans reproduce, Tayri said. It's too. She searched for a diplomatic word. Inefficient. Hana pulled up a chair. I suppose we should have covered this in your orientation. Yes, this is how humans reproduce. You physically join your bodies and exchange genetic material through fluids. Tayri's skin rippled with disbelief. Yes. And then females grow offspring inside their bodies for months before expelling them through a small opening. That's correct. Tayri's eye stalks extended fully in horror. You do this all the time. Voluntarily. Hana couldn't help but laugh at Tayri's reaction. Well, not all the time. But yes, voluntarily. For pleasure. Tayri whispered, the concept almost beyond her comprehension. Often, yes. Hana confirmed. How do lumidary reproduce? Tayri's colors stabilized slightly as she shifted to scientific explanation. We align our bioelectric fields in a resonance chamber. Our energy patterns synchronize, creating a cellular matrix between us. The matrix develops into a juvenile lumidary over approximately 40 days in an external incubation chamber. No physical contact at all. None. It would be considered extremely primitive, Tayri said, then immediately regretted her word choice. I apologize. I meant no offense. None taken, Hana assured her. Different evolutionary paths, that's all. That evening, Tayri couldn't meditate. The images from the database kept replaying in her mind. How had humans become the dominant species on their planet with such a messy, dangerous reproductive strategy? The next morning, she met Hana for breakfast with a list of questions. Many were so direct that Hana occasionally blushed while answering. So humans engage in this reproductive behavior, even when not intending to reproduce? Tayri asked, keeping her voice low though the cafeteria was nearly empty. Yes, we have methods to prevent conception. And you maintain pair bonds, sometimes for life, with your reproductive partners. Often, yes, though not always. As they talked, Dr. Kita-Yoon joined them. The young human male had been working with Hana on comparative biology. Good morning, he said cheerfully, setting down his tray. What are we discussing today? Human reproduction, Hana said matter-of-factly. Keita nearly choked on his coffee. Oh, interesting topic. Tayri was quite shocked by our methods, Hana explained. Keita looked at the lumidary with curiosity. How do your people reproduce? As Tayri explained lumidary reproduction again, she noticed both humans seemed fascinated. So there's no intimacy? Keita asked. Intimacy. Tayri's translator struggled with the concept. Physical closeness, pleasure, emotional connection, he clarified. The resonance process is considered spiritually significant, Tayri explained. But it is primarily a biological function. The idea of deriving physical pleasure from reproduction seems, she paused, searching for a polite term, unusual to us. Word of Tayri's discovery and her shocked reaction spread quickly through the station. By mid-afternoon, her question, "You do this all the time," had become a running joke among the human crew. That evening, a message arrived from the Lumidary Collective. Tayri's preliminary reports had caused considerable interest. The High Council requested more detailed information on human reproductive practices for scientific study. Tayri stared at the message in dismay. How could she possibly explain human reproduction to the Council in terms they would understand? To most Lumidary, the concept would seem not just primitive but almost barbaric. She began drafting a response, trying to frame human reproduction in scientific, non-judgmental terms. As she wrote, she realized her own perspective was shifting. Strange as human methods seemed, they had produced a species capable of space travel, complex culture, and emotional depth. Perhaps, Tayri thought, there was more to learn here than she had initially believed. The Council's interest suggested she wasn't the only one who found humans fascinatingly alien. The next morning, Tayri woke with a new determination. Her initial shock at human reproduction had settled into scientific curiosity. If she was to represent her species properly, she needed to understand this aspect of human biology thoroughly and objectively. She arranged to meet with Dr. Ki Tae-yoon, who specialized in evolutionary biology. They sat in a quiet corner of the research lab, data tablets between them. "I appreciate your willingness to discuss this topic," Tae-ri said, her skin now a calm blue of intellectual focus. "I realize my reaction yesterday may have seemed judgmental." Kita smiled. "Not at all. I'd probably be just as shocked learning about lumidary reproduction if our situations were reversed. I've been considering the evolutionary advantages of your reproductive method," Tae-ri began. "While it seems inefficient and risky compared to ours, there must be benefits that led to its development." Keita nodded enthusiastically. "There are. Sexual reproduction creates genetic diversity much faster than asexual methods. By mixing genes from two individuals, our species can adapt more quickly to environmental changes." He pulled up diagrams on his tablet. "See how genetic recombination works. Each offspring gets a unique mix of traits from both parents." Tae-ri studied the images. "Interesting. Lumidary reproduction also involves genetic contribution from two individuals, but through bioelectric resonance rather than physical exchange. Does that create the same level of genetic variance?" Kita asked. Tae-ri considered this. "No, perhaps not. Our process is more controlled. We can somewhat direct which genetic traits transfer to offspring." "That sounds advantageous in some ways," Kita admitted. "But natural selection works best with random variations. Some traits that might seem undesirable initially could become valuable in changing conditions." As they discussed further, Dr. Jin-woo Park, the station's chief medical officer, joined them. He brought detailed information about human pregnancy and fetal development. "The internal gestation period allows for complex neural development," Jin-woo explained. "Our brains are extremely energy-intensive to grow. Carrying the fetus internally ensures constant nutrition and protection during this critical period." Tae-ri absorbed this. Lumidary incubation chambers serve a similar purpose, though externally, but they require constant monitoring and energy input from our technology. "So both approaches solve the same problem through different means," Jin-woo observed. Over the next few days, Tae-ri expanded her research. She interviewed willing human couples about pair bonding and parenting. Many were initially embarrassed by her direct questions, but her scientific approach helped them open up. "So the pleasure aspect of reproduction helps maintain your pair bond?" she asked one couple, Soo-jin and Dae-ho, who had been married for 15 years. Soo-jin nodded. "Physical intimacy creates emotional closeness. It releases certain chemicals in our brains that promote bonding. And this bond benefits your offspring," Tae-ri clarified. "Definitely," Dae-ho said. "Human children develop slowly and need years of care. Having two committed parents improves their chances." Tae-ri made careful notes. The connections between reproduction, pleasure, emotional bonding, and child-rearing were fascinatingly complex. What had initially seemed primitive now appeared as an elegant evolutionary solution. One afternoon, Hannah found Tae-ri in the lab, surrounded by holographic displays of human reproductive hormones. "You've really dived into this topic," Hannah observed. "It's scientifically compelling," Tae-ri replied. "The hormonal cascades that drive human reproductive behavior are remarkably sophisticated." Hannah sat down beside her. "I'm curious now about lumidary reproduction. You've learned so much about us, but we know little about your process." Tae-ri's skin shifted to a lighter blue, the lumidary equivalent of a thoughtful expression. "Our method evolved differently. Our ancient ancestors reproduced asexually, but as our environment became more challenging, we developed bioelectric field resonance to create genetic diversity." She created a simple diagram on a nearby screen. Two lumidary enter a resonance chamber. Our bioelectric fields synchronize at specific frequencies. This creates a pattern of energy between us that organizes cells extracted from both donors into a new matrix. No pregnancy at all? Hannah asked. None. The new cellular matrix is placed in an incubation chamber. It develops there, monitored by medical technology. After 40 days, a juvenile lumidary emerges. And there's no physical component? Hannah asked carefully. Physical proximity is required for field synchronization, but not contact. In fact, touching would disrupt the delicate field patterns, Tayri explained. Hannah considered this. So there's no equivalent to our concept of sexual attraction or desire. We experience attraction, but it's based on bioelectric compatibility and intellectual resonance, Tayri said. We can sense which individuals would create the strongest field patterns with us. Fascinating, Hannah murmured. Both our species found ways to combine genetic material from two individuals, but through completely different mechanisms. That evening, Tayri recorded a detailed report for the Lumidary Collective. She carefully explained the evolutionary advantages of human reproduction, emphasizing how it solved the same fundamental problems as Lumidary methods through different means. While initially appearing primitive, she dictated, human reproduction represents an elegant solution that combines genetic diversification, offspring care, and social bonding. The physical nature of their process, while foreign to our sensibilities, serves multiple evolutionary functions simultaneously. She added, furthermore, the emotional bonds created through their reproductive method appear to strengthen their social structures in ways we might learn from. Their approach prioritizes connection where ours prioritizes efficiency. As she finished her report, Tayri realized how much her perspective had shifted. What had horrified her just days ago now fascinated her as a different but equally valid evolutionary path. The next morning, she received word that her report had created quite a stir among Lumidary scientists. Several were requesting permission to join the exchange program to study human reproduction themselves. Tayri's skin glowed with professional pride, a warm orange hue. She had turned her cultural shock into scientific opportunity. Perhaps understanding each other's most basic biological differences was the first step toward true interspecies friendship. 2 months into her stay on Orbital Station Unity, Tayri received an unusual message from Dr. Hannah Park. You are invited to attend the wedding ceremony of Dr. Junho Kang and engineer Sun Mu Choi this Saturday at 1400 hours in the station garden. Traditional attire optional, presents appreciated. Tayri stared at the message, her skin shifting to a puzzled yellow-green. She had encountered the concept of wedding in her cultural studies, but hadn't expected to witness one firsthand. She tapped her communication panel. Hannah, I received your invitation. What is appropriate behavior for a non-human guest at a wedding? Hannah's voice came through clearly. Just your presence is enough, Tayri. It's a celebration of Junho and Sunmi's decision to form a permanent pair bond. I thought you might find it interesting from a cultural perspective. Is this related to reproduction? Tayri asked directly. A slight pause. Traditionally, yes. Marriage often precedes family formation, though not always in modern times. It's primarily about commitment now. Tayri's scientific curiosity was piqued. I would be honored to attend. On Saturday, Tayri entered the station garden, a large dome filled with earth plants, where the station maintained higher oxygen levels and natural light. She wore her formal Lumidary research robe, which shimmered with subtle patterns that complemented her skin tones. The garden had been transformed. Rows of chairs faced a small arch covered in white flowers. Humans in colorful clothing filled most seats. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Tayri noticed many humans were paired, sitting close together or holding hands. Keita spotted her and waved her over. You can sit with our research group, he said, gesturing to an empty chair. As Tayri settled in, the music changed. All heads turned toward the entrance. A man, Junho, walked to the arch, wearing a dark formal suit. Then Sunmi appeared in a white dress, walking slowly toward him. Why is her garment white? Tairi whispered to Kita. Tradition. White symbolizes purity, he explained quietly. And why do they display themselves to the community this way? Public commitment is important. The community witnesses their promises to each other. Tairi observed carefully as Jun-ho and Sun-mai exchanged rings and spoke formal promises. When they kissed, the crowd applauded. Tairi joined in, her skin pulsing with interested blue-purple tones. Later, at the reception, Tairi watched humans eating, drinking, and dancing. The newly married couple moved among their guests, accepting congratulations. Are you enjoying the celebration? Hannah asked, approaching with a small plate of food. It's fascinating, Tairi replied. Do Lumidari have an equivalent ritual? I was going to ask you the same thing. Hannah smiled. Tairi considered. We have resonance declarations. Two Lumidari who wish to form a long-term partnership announced their bioelectric compatibility and intention to produce offspring together. But it's a small private ceremony with only close associates present. No big party? Hannah asked. No. Partnerships are seen as practical arrangements, not typically causes for community celebration. Sun-mai approached them, her face flushed with happiness. Dr. Park, and you must be Tairi. Thank you for coming to our wedding. Congratulations on your pair bond, Tairi said formally. May I ask a personal question? Sun-mi laughed. Of course. Everyone's been telling me about your direct approach to research. Why have you chosen to form this permanent bond? Is it primarily for reproduction? Instead of taking offense, Sun-mi considered the question thoughtfully. Jun-ho, and I do want children eventually, but that's not why we married. We love each other. We want to build a life together. Love, Tairi repeated. The concept had no direct equivalent in Lumidari language. This is the emotional attachment that develops from your physical bonding. Partly, Sun-mai said. But it's more than physical. It's emotional, intellectual, a choice we make every day to support each other. This conversation stayed with Tairi as she watched Jun-ho and Sun-mi dance, their bodies moving together in rhythm, faces close, smiling at each other. There was something beautiful in their connection that transcended the biological processes that had initially shocked her. The next day, Tairi began writing a new report for the Lumidari Collective. This one focused not on the biology of human reproduction, but on its cultural significance. Human reproduction is embedded in complex social rituals, she wrote. Their concept of love, a deep emotional attachment, appears to have evolved alongside their reproductive biology. While Lumidari view reproduction primarily as a biological function, humans have integrated it into their social, emotional, and cultural frameworks in ways that strengthen their communities. A week later, Tairi hosted the first of several cultural exchange seminars. A group of 20 humans gathered in the lecture hall, eager to learn about Lumidari reproduction and relationship structures. Lumidari do not experience physical pleasure from reproduction, she explained, displaying diagrams of bioelectric field resonance. Our satisfaction comes from successful genetic transfer and the knowledge that we are continuing our lineage. Do you fall in love? A young human researcher asked. We form intellectual and bioelectric attachments, Tairi replied. We can sense compatibility with other Lumidari. This guides our choice of partners. But without physical intimacy, how do you maintain closeness? Another asked. We engage in field harmonization, sharing our bioelectric patterns regularly. It creates a sense of connection that might be comparable to your concept of intimacy, though without physical touch. The humans looked fascinated and slightly confused. Tairi realized they found Lumidari reproduction as alien as she had initially found theirs. After the seminar, Hannah and Tairi walked together through the station corridors. Your presentation was excellent, Hannah said. Though I think some humans found it hard to imagine relationships without physical contact. Just as I initially found your reproductive methods disturbing, Tairi acknowledged. Yet now, I see a certain beauty in them. The way physical, emotional, and social aspects interconnect in human reproduction is remarkably elegant. And I'm starting to see the appeal of your bioelectric resonance, Hannah admitted. It seems so pure, direct connection without messiness. They paused at a viewport, looking out at Earth below. Perhaps, Tayri said, her skin glowing a thoughtful blue, our species have more to learn from each other than either initially realized. Starting with reproduction, Hannah smiled. It is the foundation of all species, Tayri agreed. Understanding how we differ there helps explain so many other cultural differences. As the blue planet turned slowly beneath them, Lumidary and humans stood side by side, two intelligent species beginning to truly see each other clearly for the first time. 6 months after her arrival on Orbital Station Unity, Tayri stood before a packed auditorium. Her audience included not only the station's human personnel, but also a delegation of 7 Lumidary scientists who had arrived 2 weeks earlier. Her skin glowed with a confident amber hue as she prepared to present her research findings. Today marks a significant moment in interspecies understanding, she began. When I first arrived here, I experienced what humans call culture shock upon learning about human reproduction. What initially seemed primitive and messy to me, I now recognize as an elegant evolutionary solution. The screens behind her displayed side-by-side comparisons of human and Lumidary reproductive systems. We evolved on different worlds, facing different challenges, she continued. Lumidary developed bioelectric resonance reproduction in response to the high radiation levels on our homeworld. Physical contact became dangerous for our ancient ancestors, pushing evolution toward non-contact methods. She advanced to the next slide, showing Earth's early environment. Humans, meanwhile, evolved on a planet where physical defense against predators was crucial. Your reproductive method reinforced pair bonding, which enhanced offspring survival through shared protection and resource gathering. In the front row, Hannah nodded encouragingly. Beside her sat Dabin, the enthusiastic cynobiologist who had become one of Tayri's closest human friends. The Lumidary delegation watched with keen interest, their skin colors shifting with various shades of scientific curiosity. What fascinates me most, Tayri said, is how each approach solved similar problems through different means. Both methods ensure genetic diversity. Both create social structures that support offspring development. Both lead to complex cultures and advanced intelligence. After her presentation, humans and Lumidary mingled in the reception area. Many approached Tayri to thank her for bridging their understanding. Your research has changed how we see ourselves, said Dr. Jinho, the station's medical director. We never considered how our reproductive biology shaped our entire social structure. Meanwhile, the Lumidary scientists were engaged in animated discussions with human researchers. Their skin colors flashed with excitement as they exchanged ideas. Lead scientist Yori, the eldest of the Lumidary delegation, approached Tayri. Your work honors the collective, she said formally. The Council is considering establishing a permanent research exchange based on your findings. That would be a great achievement, Tayri replied, her skin pulsing with pleased purple tones. Later that evening, Tayri joined Hannah and Dabin in the observation lounge. Through the large viewport, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the blackness of space. I can't believe you're leaving next week, Dabin said, a note of sadness in her voice. It feels like you just arrived. I will return, Tayri assured her. The Council has approved my request to lead the new exchange program. Hannah smiled. From being horrified by human reproduction to becoming our chief cultural interpreter, you've come a long way. The journey challenged many of my assumptions, Tayri admitted. Not just about humans, but about my own species as well. Dabin leaned forward. What was the biggest surprise? Tayri's skin shifted to a thoughtful blue. Discovering that what seemed most alien about humans, your physical connection during reproduction, is also what creates your greatest strength, your capacity for emotional bonding. And what have humans learned about Lumidary? Hannah asked. That efficiency isn't everything, Dabin answered before Tayri could. Your reproduction is more advanced technologically, but ours connects us in ways technology can't replace. The three sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars. Next week, the first human scientist will travel to the Lumidari homeworld, Tayri said. She'll probably experience her own shock at our ways. Hannah laughed. I can imagine. You never touch each other. Ever. Some concepts simply don't translate perfectly, Tayri said. Like your word love. We have no exact equivalent. But you understand it now. Dabin asked. I recognize its importance in human society, Tayri said carefully. Though I experience emotions differently, I've come to appreciate the depth of human connections. The next day, Tayri received a surprise. The station management had organized a farewell gathering in the garden. When she arrived, she found not only her human colleagues, but also the Lumidari delegation. A banner read, Bridging Worlds. Thank you, Tayri. Jun-Ho and Sunmai, the couple whose wedding she had attended, approached her with a small package. We wanted to give you something to remember us by, Sunmai said, pressing the gift into Tayri's hands. Inside was a crystal pendant shaped like Earth, and the Lumidari homeworld orbiting each other. It's beautiful, Tayri said, her skin flushing with touched pink hues. It's a physical reminder of the connection you've helped create, Jun-Ho explained. As the party continued, Yori approached Tayri again. I've been observing human interactions closely, the elder Lumidari said. Their constant physical contact initially seemed unnecessary, even primitive. And now? Tayri asked. Now I wonder if the Lumidari lost something when we evolved away from physical touch. Their connections seem deeper in some ways. Different, not better or worse, Tayri suggested. Yori's skin rippled agreement. The Council is discussing an experimental program to incorporate elements of human bonding behavior into our cultural practices. Not the reproductive aspects, of course, but the community-building elements. That would be unprecedented, Tayri said, surprised. Your research has opened minds, Yori replied simply. On her final day aboard the station, Tayri packed her few possessions. The crystal pendant from Jun-Ho and Sunmai sat beside her personal resonance crystal, symbols of two worlds now connected in her life. A knock at her door revealed Hannah and Dabin. We'll escort you to the departure bay, Hannah said. As they walked through the station, many humans stopped to say goodbye. Some even attempted the Lumidari farewell gesture, a specific pattern of hand movements that mimicked bioelectric resonance. At the airlock, Hannah surprised Tayri by stepping forward and carefully, respectfully, placing a hand near, but not quite touching, Tayri's arm. Is this acceptable? Hannah asked. I know Lumidari avoid physical contact. Tayri's skin flickered with emotion. For this moment, yes. She allowed her arm to move slightly, making the briefest contact with Hannah's fingers, her first voluntary touch with a human. When you return, Dabin said, smiling through tears, we'll have so many new questions for you. And I for you, Tayri replied. This is not an ending, but a beginning. What started with my horror at your reproductive methods has become a bridge between our worlds. As the Lumidari ship detached from the station, Tayri watched the human world grow smaller. Her research had changed her forever. She had come to study aliens and discovered how much they had in common despite their differences. In the strangest way, understanding human reproduction had led to understanding humans themselves. Different worlds, different solutions, she murmured to herself, but the same fundamental questions.